Hey guys, welcome back to the Results Junkies podcast. Paul and I are back with some topics that are very topical. AI is obviously the big topic of the day, but we're going to talk a little bit about Apple and maybe some missteps that they've made in this space. And there are a number of huge steps forward and huge steps back in the AI world. So I think that's an interesting topic for us to cover. And Microsoft has some layoffs, but they're not really talking about who they're laying off and why they're laying them off, which, as all roads lead back to AI. This Microsoft road may lead back to AI as well. Paul, good to have you back in front of the microphone, my friend.
I'm sorry. I've been giving you the runaround for feel like 2 weeks now. So I got no lame excuses. Actually, I have excuses. They're all lame.
Okay,
I
well
don't
that's
even know
fair.
why I said that, but
Well, I mean,
uh,
we have actual signs of life. You're on the microphone, so I think that's a
well,
great
okay.
thing.
Let's not overdo it here. I don't know if it's signs of life here.
I don't. Well, I mean, this
I'm two
doesn't look
cups of
like
coffee
AI,
in.
Paul. It could be AI, Paul, but it doesn't look like
Oh,
AI,
too
Paul.
soon. Too soon, man. Too soon. I don't know. No, we'll talk about that in here in a little bit. But no, I'm good. I'm good. Kids are getting older. We're past that spring break, family stuff. I feel like May is the new December. At least with December, you cap it off with Christmas and holidays and all that. May is just full of kids stuff, family stuff, all that stuff, end of school year stuff, and there's no Christmas at the end with presents.
Mm.
I see you sitting in a hotel. What's new there?
Yes, unfortunately, a long stretch on the road. Had meetings in Vegas last week for some construction projects. Then in Chicago for the restaurant show, and then a meeting with one of our key vendors here in Chicago to renew our
Is
faith and love in some of our biggest vendor relationships.
it? Oh, that sounds so wonderful. Yes, I'm sure. A little bit of whining and dining. Is there ever a day? So when your second goes off to college, is there ever a day that you guys will pack up your stuff and like buy one of those like suites at a hotel or something like that? I
It's a
I
good
feel
question. I could certainly see me being the guy that does like the back to back to back to back cruises, for sure.
okay.
But
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, I would like to be at a point where I could travel whenever I want, but I'm not there yet for sure.
I love it. I love it. All right. Well, it's been a busy couple weeks, it seems like, by the way.
It
Go
has
ahead.
been. It has been. Yeah. Show at resultsjunkies.com is how you find us. He is at Paul Singh on all those social media channels. I am at Pizza in Motion. So let's dive into Apple. And I think, like every one of the large players in AI continues to release new models. The new models continue to improve. There were some recent stories about Facebook delaying or Meta delaying the launch of their newest model. And amidst all this, we know that Apple is in the AI game, but they're not necessarily making headlines. And more to the point, they're making some maybe not bombastic negative headlines, but the stuff that's come out recently is more about like what's wrong with Apple's version of AI. Now, what's coming next is hard to say, and Apple did get a late start, but I think like what this article talks about is this reality that it seems like Apple is behind everyone else from an AI standpoint, and whether that's intentional or they're just failing is really this big open question.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. This article, and I think you'll put it in the in the show notes here. That this article, I think, to me, kind of it really connected with me because I think it put into words what I've been thinking about or feeling lately without knowing how to say it. So, before we get to talking about Apple, the first bullet point here, they talk about how they were reluctant to make large investments in AI. And then they go on, and the one unnamed Apple executive says, "You really don't know what the product is until you've done the investment." And that would have meant having to buy expensive GPUs, da, 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 right? And so I thought that to me was like, it really resonates because I imagine most of the people listening to this are in the tech space, so they understand some of software and technology and all that. I think it's generally accepted that for most software and technology problems, you're investing time, money, effort into a known outcome. We're solving this problem. Um, AI, at least for me, has just been one of those things where you kind of know it when you see it, but it's probably not part of the spec from the beginning, if you will. So, anyway, maybe that's a different discussion for later. But when you put all this together, it's kind of like a damning thing. It's kind of like they didn't see it coming. There's another line in here where it says Apple Intelligence wasn't even an idea before ChatGPT launched in late 2022. which is wild to me because it's not like those conversations weren't happening. And it's not like they weren't, within 2 miles of almost everybody that was developing this stuff in the Valley. So, you know, it, the armchair quarterback in me wants to know what happened here, but anyway, I think it kind of also speaks to the fact that like it says marketing got out over its skis, which is really fascinating because you would think that, that the executive team would have tried to make sure that all the teams were in lockstep, but it seems that the promises made by the marketing side of things were much, much more aggressive than where any of the rest of the product was. So I'm rambling here a bit, so I should probably stop. But this is Apple in rare form, it seems like, because they are really, really tight-lipped. I can't remember. I think the last time I ever heard anything like this was the Google Maps, Apple Maps stuff, maybe a decade ago, maybe
Yeah.
more.
Yeah.
It's wild to see how far it just doesn't feel right. Like
Well, and I
it's
think
not the
like
Apple we know.
yeah, to frame that up, Apple Maps was far behind Google Maps, and while I think they're probably closer, I would say one of two things: either they haven't caught up to Google Maps, or people like me who have used Google Maps for so long are just so used to that interface that they don't feel like the Apple interface has caught up. I guess the question that I have, and I want to be careful here because I do own Apple shares, and so I want to make sure I don't have a bias. The thing I'm not sure of yet that's different for me than what a lot of these other engines out there are doing, whether you're talking about Anthropic or Grok or OpenAI or all this stuff, they all have a B2C play. You and I subscribe to, at least I think we still do. So I subscribe to the paid version of ChatGPT.
Yep.
I think you do too as well.
Yep.
I mean, but they also have lots of B2B plays and, using larger accounts for software development, code generation, and all those sorts of things. That's not an obvious play for Apple. They are at heart a B2C consumer or a B2C company right now. And so, like, there is this question of, are they supposed to build it or are they supposed to buy it? And I think that this article clearly says that whatever efforts that they've put out there so far to build it are failing. And I think, well, I'll take a stop there because I have some opinions, but I'm curious, in terms of the AI functions that are on the iPhone now, you and I both have iPhones. How do you feel about those products and are you using them?
I'm using ChatGPT. For $20 a month, I get more value. Like I had it edit a couple of things that I was writing last week, and just that was worth, the 30 minutes it saved me was worth it. I want to believe in the iPhone. So like on my phone here, I've got the ChatGPT shortcuts on the bottom, so audio over here, and then the whatever written version over there. I want to love it, which is great. I mean, I use it. And then, what's really frustrating to me is that, how I think you have an iPhone 16 Pro like I do. You know
Yeah.
how like on this little, I don't know what you call the feature, this little button down here where you turn on the camera?
Yeah.
You can like long press that and it's supposed to be like the visual search. It's supposed to like turn on Apple Intelligence. I, I don't, I think that feature was built by somebody that does not actually use the feature because like, it's clunky. Like it's faster for me to just Google something. Like
Yeah.
yesterday, I
I
was
agree.
like, there was an empty quart of oil that I just needed to get another quart of,
Right.
and I just wanted to try it. So I just like long pressed it. I took a picture of the quart and I hit the ask button,
Right.
and it craps out. It just
Mm.
and it's like I don't know. It's just frustrating. So I want to believe in it. Maybe one of these future updates will be cool. Who knows? But it's not working for me right now. It's like I either got to go straight to ChatGPT if I know I need that kind of work, or I go straight to Google if I really need to just search on something, and I go straight to Amazon right now if I just need to go buy something. Um, so it's all clunky. Sorry, one last thing. Have you
Yeah.
noticed, by the way, with Siri, when you ask a question, if it doesn't know the answer, it will then go ask ChatGPT?
You'll probably yell at me like you did with Superhuman, but I turned Siri off back in the teens and haven't turned it back on.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
But I believe you. I do believe you.
I love the awkwardness in which you use that admission came out, like as if I was going to reach out through the internet and grab you.
I mean, it's possible. I mean, it is. Look. It's certainly on. It would certainly be on brand for you to be mad at me. I think so. Let me ask you a question. Do you use the AI feature on the iPhone to summarize your text messages for you?
I have it turned on. I think it's kind of funny. Like when my mother-in-law will text on our family chain or whatever, and it,
Uh
it
huh.
summarizes it. I'm like, oh man, it's got my mother-in-law for sure.
Yeah, I lasted. I lasted
Lynn
a.
is worried about everything.
Yeah. I lasted about 24 hours with that turned on, and then just
Yeah.
realized that it didn't serve enough of a purpose for me. And I'll just not that we want to get overly nerdy about these things. I think we're trying to talk in the abstract, but the way that like I use the lock screen on my iPhone pretty aggressively over the course of a day because I get a lot of inbound messages, and so if it pops up on my lock screen, I take a quick look, and if it's not relevant, like it goes into one of many filing cabinets in the back of my head, and hopefully somebody who works for me files it correctly, and I can follow up on it, or I remember to follow up on it, or I tag it right in that moment because it's important. But a summary, in many cases, we summarize the last 5 messages from this text thread for you, doesn't really. I think what I'm finding is it's not as action oriented as I would expect it. So it doesn't say Paul needs you to record at 9. It'll say things like Paul discussed recording options. And it's like, well, that's too general. I need it to be more specific. And I couldn't find any way quickly to train it to tell it to be more specific. So I just shut it off and said, I'll come back to you next year. So, so far the things that I think we talked about and what I was optimistic about that Apple might do with AI in terms of creating my own small language model on my phone and be able to train on things and stuff like that hasn't proven to be gangbusters out of the box. So I'm not really giving it much data because I keep turning features off. So I'm also, potentially slowing down its ability to learn more from me.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, not to jump ahead, but just to kind of like maybe connect this to the next topic we're going to talk about just for a minute.
Hmm.
It's so interesting, right? Because you and I are experiencing it's very similar things where it's almost like the promise of the AI is still far, far ahead of the utility we actually get from it, which, kind of flies in the face of the next topic we'll talk about when we get to. But it is just fascinating because very few technologies that I recall have this sort of weird um, difference between like the promises they make and what they do, what's actually happened. Yeah, I mean, I'm still not at the point where I can trust it. I mean, I leave the text summaries on for humor. I mean, all joking aside, I seriously leave them on just for humor.
Yeah.
It's in the context of probably your work and my work, it's very hard to distill the feelings of the contents of a 27 text chain into 2 sentences for the lock screen. So that from that perspective, the utility is not all that great.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's humorous, of course, but I'm not willing to bet. I'm not willing to if I'm like in a heavy conversation with somebody and there's a key piece of information coming on the lock screen. I'm not trusting the AI
Yeah.
to accurately summarize it.
Yeah. I would agree
Um,
with that. And I mean, look, I mean, Apple, I mean, we're still in the very early innings of AI, but I think you said something a handful of episodes ago that I think rings true, and then I think we'll slide into our next topic on Microsoft. But you've said more than once, this philosophy of like, you get people ingrained in a model and whether they're likely to move because they're that model is evolving with them. So if ChatGPT
yeah,
knows who your mom is or your mother-in-law is and can identify those things in chats and give you key information of like don't forget to thank Lynn for the gift she gave or something like that, then
yeah, yeah,
you may be more entrenched and less likely to leave. And so now instead of using Apple's native products, you might be using the ChatGPT app on your
yeah.
iPhone, and Apple might miss a generation of being able to have you use their services.
Yeah, yeah. It'll be interesting. I just to be clear, I'm not anti any of this stuff, by the way.
Sure.
I think that given the
Yeah.
amount of investment that's going into this, not only in terms of like the compute, but now also the power conversations that are happening sort of
Right.
across congressional hearings, I think this stuff is going to converge for sure. The big question is like, do you and I, as normal consumers, feel that in the next, you know, 2 minor version releases with Apple, or does it
Right.
take the next 3 years? It's somewhere between that. I feel like it's in the next 6 months to the next 3 years, somewhere in there. We're going to get enough utility out of this stuff where it's like, how did we live without this? Um,
Yeah, and I think by the time we know whether the $20 a month model that you and I are on for ChatGPT is a long-term winning subscription model for somebody like Apple, it'll probably be too late for them to catch up in a meaningful way. But I still don't have that answer
Mm.
today. So
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah.
let's talk. We've talked layoffs a lot on the show over the years. I think this layoff conversation is a little bit more interesting in that Microsoft is laying off 6,000 employees. They did some layoffs in January that they described as more performance based. In this instance, there are some reports on Reddit, and these are unsubstantiated reports that this is adversely affecting coders more than other groups in the company, so software developers. And Microsoft has already made the claim. Their CEO Satya came out and said, "Hey, we're 30% more effective at code generation now with these AI tools." And so it would make some sense that you could eliminate some positions. And so it's one of these like, is this the first Fortune 100 sizable layoff that we're seeing because of AI?
Well, I think what he said was specifically, you're close. He said 30% of the company's code was now written by AI, which is, I mean, that's pretty profound. I this is a difficult topic to talk about because you know, really what's happening here, I think if you kind of get through the headline, right? The
Mm-hmm.
headline is, oh my gosh, they're letting go of 2,000 people, 3% of the work staff. And by the way, those are obviously big numbers. And, I feel for the people that are affected. But this is an example of something that never doesn't really, maybe doesn't really face earlier stage companies in the sense that you've got Microsoft, who is probably, I don't know, a 40-year-old company now. And, I guess where I'm trying to go with this, here's a half-baked thought on this.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of old school legacy companies like Microsoft had to grow their headcount to a certain point because the tools that were available for the longest time required it, right? Like you
Sure.
expected a certain amount
Yeah.
of productivity. And,
Yeah.
and so, you know, it's easy to kind of glance at a headline like this and like, oh man, look at all that bloat. Wow. How did they have 30% more engineers? How did they have all these management layers in there? And kind of assume that it was immediately bloat. I think for larger companies like this, really what it is that they're adapting to the times. Now, I'm sure there's probably a little bit of bloat in there somewhere, but if
Sure.
we just put that aside for a minute, this is really more about companies modernizing themselves, legacy companies modernizing themselves. Um, because like even myself, when I was reading this one, I'm thinking, oh, I wonder if my engineers are using AI. Like I just immediately was thinking, gosh, are my engineers, good? But then I have to remind myself, we're doing like hundreds of, actually, yeah, probably about 100 million. We're serving like 100 million requests a month right now with a
Uh-huh.
team of like 6, 7, something like that. So it's like, I feel pretty good about that. I should probably go check, but feel pretty good about that. So yeah, I think what you're going to see is more legacy companies like this. Legacy sounds so bad, but you're going to see more established companies like this. I think try to right side their costs. And I can't recall, but you and I talked about a similar topic. I forget. Maybe it was probably. I feel like it was probably 3, 4 months ago, where it was another company that had done a bunch of layoffs. It wasn't Shopify. It was somebody
It's
else. Anyway,
Klarna. It could have been
what they
Klarna.
said was like, hey, with the savings that they're going to get from releasing a bunch of these people, it's going right back into AI tools, and sort of the infrastructure they needed to be able to like use more AI. So, um, yeah.
Yeah,
Anyway, so
I think that was Klarna. Yeah.
that's it. That's it. Yeah, yeah, that's
Who
right.
just swung to a profit this quarter after losing a little bit of money last quarter. So, it's still hard to tell if that's working or not. I think, I mean, my personal opinion, and Lord knows that the CEO of Microsoft doesn't need any advice from me, but I think, I think at
But
least
here we
from my,
go.
yeah, exactly. I think from my standpoint, the way I would be proceeding in AI in a world according to Ed is I don't know that I would be focusing on mass layoffs. I think what I would be looking at is I'd certainly be mapping out which departments I think are no longer necessary. I would be mapping out which departments can probably shrink over time and which departments should grow over time. And then I would be continuing to move assets along those same lines. So if you left a position at the company, or if we thought that your position was no longer relevant in the company, I might make an attempt to move you to a different position in the company that the company needed that you might be effective at. I might offer you a buyout. I also might just wait for you to leave and
Yeah.
fill the position later. And I mean, I guess
Yep.
it is possible that Microsoft's doing that, and they really have. 25,000 employees that they need to repurpose, but these 6,000 are the people who really just can't do anything else in the company.
Hmm.
That's certainly possible, but I think the thing that's interesting here is AI is moving at such an incredible pace, and it's almost anathema to companies that are public and having to make quarterly decisions to control your stock because you almost can't react fast enough. And so it's just this weird paradox, in my opinion, of how can you possibly, in the course of 3 months, really make meaningful decisions on what's next for AI? It's moving so quickly, but it takes all this time to process all these new things. And what is the productivity gain, and how long will that last, and how much money do you need to put into the next model?
I mean, that's yes, 100% yes. I mean, it kind of ties back to what we were talking about with the Apple stuff in the sense that most of these projects, most things you do in business have a clear outcome that you're going after.
Yeah,
And so when you decide to make an investment or cut an investment, you kind of know when you'll feel it. This whole broad term of AI is really difficult, I think, for a lot of business owners, business leaders, because you kind of know you have to invest in it, but what success looks like on the other side is very hard to quantify or at least spec out in the investment. Because surely, I mean, I like this is going to sound, hyperbolic, but if we knew that we could invest $1 and get 30% more of something on the other side, any reasonable person would probably take that bet.
sure.
The,
Yeah,
the, the fact that most won't yet is because it's not clear whether you'll get that 30% on the other side.
yeah,
And maybe there'll be research studies 5 years from now when all the dust settles and everybody looks back and says, okay, here's how, the ones that survived, got lucky. And then here's all the other investments that everybody made that failed that nobody wanted to talk about. We'll have a lot of
yeah.
case studies, but
Well, it does feel like there's some amount of, maybe luck's not the right word, but good fortune maybe sounds a little bit more generic here. And that with all the money that companies like Microsoft are spending on AI, it does seem like if they're not producing outsized revenue growth after making those massive investments, that something like layoffs like this give them cover to show that AI is doing something for the company. And I'm not saying that what Microsoft is doing here is performative,
yeah,
but certainly this is one of the reactions the street is expecting when they see Microsoft spend billions on NVIDIA
yeah.
chips. It's like, okay, well, we expect that you will either sell a lot more subscriptions or you'll be able to reduce headcount. Um, so,
It's I don't know if this is relevant or not, and I will admit, I'm just a small fish here, but one thing that so just about 2 weeks ago, one of the things I was stuck on a flight, and of course Wi-Fi wasn't working, but I had my Google Docs synced with my with my browser. Anyway, one thing I went ahead and did and then released on the other end of the flight was that so we have this standard set of job descriptions that we expect
yeah,
across the company, and so it's templatized, right? So it's like, hey, here's the 80% I expect to be in every offer letter or in every job description we post.
right?
And then the hiring manager needs to tell me what the skills are, whatever. I updated the master template to show that one of the skills we'd like to see in all new hires, whether you're a frontline RCM employee or senior system architect on the engineering side, is demonstrated experience or interest in AI tools. And we
Mm,
we tried to word it in such a way where it was really more of like a filter, because I think that, and this is a half baked thought. I apologize, but as I think about the future, even as of our company, and again, I'm just a sample size of one for anybody listening. But here's the thing: we don't, just like we're talking about these articles, we don't know what the future holds for AI. We don't know whether $1 invested today will get us something useful later. But what I do know is that if I can make sure that more and more new people coming into the company are expected to have tinkered with these things and maybe just talk knowledgeably about how they've used some of these tools, maybe that could help us at least be ready for it as it's coming down the pipe. Again, totally half-baked thought, but I think the way I'm sort of adapting to it right now is just to make sure that, we're at a team of size of about 70 people now. Realistically, we'll probably be somewhere between 110, 130 in the next 12 months. And if I
hmm
can make sure that those next 30 or 50 hires are asked as part of their hiring process, how they use AI and things like that, maybe that could help me kind of start to get the company flooded more with people like that. I don't know. Again,
Right,
half baked
right.
thought here. I'm curious what other listeners are seeing in their own businesses. But yeah, I'm not ready to send the email like was it Klarna or somebody, the CEO, send the email? It's like AI's coming for your jobs. It's coming for mine too. I'm not ready to send that email yet. I think it's really more about like let's get more people in here that are tinkering with ChatGPT to schedule their Disney trip.
Right. Right.
Because maybe that'll make them more ready for when we do kind of release some new tools on our end that we're working on.
And I do like how you brought it full circle to Disney. I mean, there really doesn't.
I thought
seem
that
like
would
a better
resonate with
place
you.
to- yeah, it does, yeah. Yes, it does resonate. It is an absolutely great place to land the plane because I'm going to Disney this coming weekend. Shock
No
of
way.
shocks.
Of course
I
not.
know.
I know. Wow.
Yeah. Wow. Wow.
Wow.
People everywhere stunned and slack-jawed.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I was gonna say, if the day ends in Y, you're thinking about going to Disney. So
Yes, it's true. It is
I
very,
love
it's
it.
very, very true.
Well, look, there's gonna be a day. I'm waiting for the Disney app update. So, you and Michelle have been going to Disney long enough where like there was no fast pass, right? I mean, hell, even when I started going, there was no fast pass, right? You just kind of had to like wander.
And
now
paper fast pass
I walk
systems have
around.
just started. Yeah.
Yeah, and now we're at the point where like my wife and I one of us will agree to push the stroller or like herd the kids, and the other's looking straight at their phone to see which ride's next.
Yep.
But we're probably not far from an upcoming Disney update where some sort of AI powered genie tells us which way to walk.
Oh, I mean, those things already exist to some degree. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So actually, I'm sure some like Disney entrepreneur somewhere is like mapping those or, taking those wait times from the website and just kind of, charging people for text alerts on which way to go.
Yep. No, there are companies that do that. Crowd calendars, all that stuff. Like all that stuff is out there. No question about it.
It's a brave new world. I love it. I love it.
It's a brave new world. All right. Well, I think that's a good place to pin it for this week. We should be back in front of our microphones later this week or early next week to drop another episode for folks.
I love it, man. Well, good luck in Chicago. I hope you build tight vendor relationships with your favorite people.
I'm stopping off at one of my favorite donut places before our meeting tomorrow. So one can only imagine that will help the cause.
I love it, man. All right. Well, safe travels. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks.